You know, it's so easy to think of cybersecurity as just one thing, like some magic piece of software that keeps us safe. But honestly, the reality is a lot more like building an old school medieval castle. It's not about having one super strong wall, it's about a whole strategy, a fortress we build layer by layer to protect our digital lives. So that really makes you wonder, right? Just think about your own online habits for a second. Is your digital life built on a flimsy foundation of sand, just waiting for the first big wave to come crashing in? Or is it standing on solid rock, on a defensive strategy that's been thought through? Today, let's explore how to build that foundation. The blueprint for our fortress has a name. It's called Defense in Depth. And the idea is actually pretty simple, but it's incredibly powerful. You just create multiple overlapping layers of security. So if an attacker somehow gets past one wall, bam, they're immediately hit with another one, and then another one after that. The whole point is to make their job as frustrating and difficult as possible. All right, so where do we lay the first stone for this fortress? You might think it's with some fancy, expensive technology, but nope. We start with people. The first and honestly the most critical layer is always the human factor. I mean, think about it. A castle with the strongest walls in the world is completely useless if someone on the inside just opens the front gate for the enemy. And you hear this from experts all the time. We spend so much energy worrying about these super sophisticated attacks coming from the outside. But as Ricardo Gazzoli points out here, some of the biggest threats are already walking the halls. Now, that could be a malicious employee for sure, but way more often, it's just someone who makes an honest mistake. And just how real is that insider threat? Well, this statistic is kind of shocking. A study found that nearly 1 in 5 employees would actually be willing to sell their company password. And we're not talking for $1 million. Some would do it for a ridiculously low price. This makes that abstract idea of risk feel very, very real. So how do attackers actually take advantage of this human layer? It's all through something called social engineering. Basically, they use psychology to trick us into letting them in. They might impersonate someone you trust, like a call from IT support, or they'll use fear with a big, scary pop-up that says your computer is infected. Or, my personal favorite, they create this false sense of urgency, like this offer expires in 30 seconds, to force you to act without thinking. So that leads us right into the next layer of our defense, the first wall pretty much everyone thinks of. Passwords. I know, for years we've been hearing that passwords are dead, they're on their way out, but let's be real. They are still a fundamental part of our security, and we've got to treat them that way. Now, protecting a password today is way more complex than you might think. Imagine it's like a secret recipe. When you create a password, a good system doesn't just write it down. First, it adds a unique, random ingredient called a salt. Then it mixes in a secret pepper, which is kept in a totally separate location. Only then is that whole concoction transformed into a secure hash. That's why even if attackers manage to steal the password database, they can't easily work backward to figure out what your real password was. Okay, so our people are trained, our passwords are secure. What's next? Well, now we need the invisible structure that holds the entire thing together, the rules. Security policies and procedures are literally the backbone of your entire fortress. But a rule is totally useless if nobody follows it, right? The Cudsey method is a great way to think about this. A good policy has to be clear and understandable. People need to get not just the what, but the why behind it. It's got to be distributable and socialized, so people actually know it exists. And, this is the big one, it has to be enforceable. There have to be real consequences if you don't follow the rules. And policies can't be islands. They can't exist in a vacuum. I mean, what good is the world's best password policy if your physical access policy is so weak that someone can just walk into the server room and unplug the machine? All the rules have to work together, just like the walls and the gates and the moats of a fortress all have to be integrated to actually work. Now we get to the fun stuff, the tech. This is our arsenal. These are the active, high-tech tools and the expert teams that are standing on the front lines, defending our fortress day in and day out. In the cybersecurity world, you basically have 2 main teams. The blue team, those are the defenders. They're the ones building the walls, setting the rules, and watching for threats. Then you have the red team. They're what we call ethical hackers. Their job is to attack the fortress, to test all the defenses and find every single weakness so the blue team can fix it before a real attacker finds it first. So what kind of tools are these teams using? Well, there are thousands, but here are a few of the classics. Wireshark is like having magic glasses that let you see every single piece of data moving around on your network. Nmap is like a sonar system that maps out your entire network so you can see every device that's connected. OpenVAS is your tireless guard, constantly patrolling the walls and automatically checking for any known weaknesses. And Metasploit? That's the red team's toolkit for actually trying to break through those weaknesses. So after all these layers, the people, the passwords, the policies, the tech, are we finally secure? Well, this brings us to what might be the most important part of all, the defender's mindset. You have to realize that security isn't a product you can just buy. It's not a wall you build once and then walk away from. It is a continuous, never-ending process.
Let's put it all together. Your digital fortress is built on all these interconnected layers. It starts with the human layer, which then reinforced by a solid policy layer. Access is protected by the access layer, strong passwords and controls. The whole thing is guarded by the technology layer with firewalls and other tools. And finally, the testing layer makes sure you're constantly looking for cracks in your own walls.
And remember, the goal of defense in depth isn't to be 100% impenetrable. Honestly, that's impossible. The goal is to make attacking you so difficult, so time-consuming, and so expensive that the bad guys just give up and move on to an easier target. Every single layer we've talked about adds another barrier, another headache they have to deal with. So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this one thought. Security is not a wall you build and then forget about. It's a fortress that you have to constantly patrol, constantly repair, and constantly defend. So the real question you should be asking yourself isn't, am I secure? But rather, which of my layers is the weakest? And what am I going to do today to make it stronger?